Hey everybody, it's Lady Ambrosia. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you all are having a blessed Litha. I hope you all are having a beautiful summer solstice. Today I wanted to just kind of make a quick video about mediumship and about gypsy mediumship and how I do mediumship. This is something that I talked about in one of my live streams and that a lot of you were interested in learning more about. So I kind of wanted just to kind of get into that and show you guys how I do it. So first, I want to define mediumship and what mediumship is. My definition of mediumship would be like contacting the dead and relating messages from the other side, the other world, the underworld, Summerland, wherever the other side is. Your spiritual mileage may vary, but basically, mediumship is contacting those who have passed on, contacting those who are in the other side, those who are deceased, and relaying messages back to their loved ones. You can do this yourself for your own ancestors or your own loved ones, or you could be doing this for someone else's loved ones or someone else's ancestors. I do both. I do mediumship workings for myself as well as other people. So that kind of goes into and defines what mediumship is. I think a lot of people, when they hear mediumship, they almost kind of think of, or a medium, they almost kind of think of this like circle of people in this old house in the dark with dimly lit candles on a table, sitting in a circle, everyone's holding their hands. And I'm not here to say whether or not that's how you could do mediumship. I think that's often how it's depicted in the movies and stuff, but this is going to be how I personally do mediumship. So, mediumship in a lot of Romani culture is permeable throughout. Ancestor veneration is a very large part of the culture. And so this is something that a lot of Romani people are taught early on. And it's kind of like table talk, because ancestors play a huge part of our lives within our culture. And also, I think for a lot of spiritualists or pagans or witches, it can play a big part of their practice as well. So when you have those two overlaying groupings in one, you can see how ancestor veneration and kind of why mediumship became so prevalent here in modern times and even in our ancient cultures. I think pretty much every culture had some form or some way of getting messages across and to those beloved on the other side. You can also do mediumship for anyone who's passed on. This doesn't even have to be a blood relative. This could be a friend of the family. This could be a friend of yours, or this could be someone from history. When I look at mediumship, I think of it very much from the same aspect of almost how you would channel deity, or almost how you would receive message from deities. And I think a lot of people look at them very separately, which respectfully they are, but as far as getting these messages and these signs, they can be very similar. And you can kind of take the same approach you would to a god or a goddess or a folklore spirit to an ancestor or to just a spirit who's on the other side, period. Okay, so that's kind of my tidbit about mediumship and my viewpoints on it and how I define it. So let's kind of now get into the nitty gritty of how you can actually bring gypsy mediumship, Romani mediumship into your practice and how it could potentially enrich your way of contacting those on the other side. So, step one, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to figure out who you're trying to talk to. That's most important. So, like when I have a client who comes to me, I tell them, my prices, this and that. We do a consultation, and then I also let them know that I have several guidelines that do need to be followed. And if you submit to these guidelines, then we can continue on. But there's kind of several steps if it's me doing it for someone else. So I'll talk about that way first. So if you were to come to me and say, hey, I want to talk to this ancestor, blah, blah, blah. I would like to receive messages from them. I would like to hear what they have to say. Oftentimes, the people who are coming to me for this line of work are not very connected to the other world or feel uncomfortable working with spirits themselves. So they will work through someone else, aka a medium. Okay. So step one, you're gonna need to know that spirit's full name. Oftentimes for many people this would be like the spirit they'd be trying to talk to would probably be a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or a grandfather or a grandmother or a great great grandparent. But you're going to need to know this spirit's name. And why you need to know this spirit's name is because it has to be invoked. Just like with the deity, you're going to need to know the deity's name that you plan on working with. Otherwise, you're not going to be invoking that exact force or that exact energy. So first, full name, first, middle, if applicable, and last name. Preferable, the whole name is what I need to know. Also, the birthday. And the reason why you have the birthday is because this is another mundane connection to this spirit. Let's say, for instance, Jane comes to you and says, I would like to talk to my grandmother. Her name was Mary Jo Smith. So there you go, you have her name, and her birthday was February 2nd, 1924. Let's just say. The reason why you want that birthday is because that connects also with that spirit when they were born here in their past lifetime in this physical earthly realm. So that kind of gives you an idea of when they were born. And it also has to work with astrology. So by their birthday, you also know, what elemental house they fall under, what zodiac they are. And you can also even bring in numerology with the day of their birthday. And you can use their name and their birthday systematically to connect you to that spirit. So that's pretty much step one. Step two is I would typically inform the person receiving mediumship, or if I was doing this for myself, I would make sure I follow these guidelines. So step two, I would tell that person who is receiving a consultation from me who is wanting some mediumship work done, but they also need to bring something that represents this said spirit. So for example, let's say you're trying to contact your mother or your grandmother, your grandfather. Maybe you have a ring that belonged to them and that they wore in their past life that you could bring. Or maybe it's your brother and maybe he played baseball. Maybe you have a baseball bat or a baseball ball that you could bring with you. In the few instances I've encountered where someone does not have something that represents said spirit, I think you can also create something or bring something to represent that, even if it didn't belong to them. Let's say your dad was a doctor and you bring a stethoscope. That's another way to kind of, y'all, my nose is itching sitting here talking about spirits. You know what that means. But let's say your father was a doctor and you didn't really know him and you've heard of him, but you've never really met him. You don't have anything that belongs to him. So you bring a stethoscope to represent that connection to your father with the medical field. Excuse me. So bring something or have something to also represent the spirit and the physical world, because we have their birthday and we have their name to work and kind of connect us and the physical to them in the other world, other side, underworld, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, the third step, this is equally as important as the first and second, but you're going to want to have an offering prepared. And the reason for this is because you always want to respect the spirits, whatever spirits you're working with, including deities. Okay, doesn't have to necessarily be ancestors, but you always want to show your respect and you always want to give thanks for the communionship between X and Y, us being the X and spirits or deity or whoever, Fae, being the Y. So oftentimes people bring offerings of flowers. This is a pretty prevalent offering, especially here in modern culture. People even take flowers with them to graveyards. Those would be offerings. Candies, chocolates, honeys, booze, ale. I know that working with my mother, she smoked Marlboro Reds, cowboy killers. So I will often make offerings of Marlboro Reds to my mother because that's what she smoked. So you can kind of use your own creativity and intuition to know what your spirit would like. Now, if I am doing this mediumship for you, right, I don't know your spirit. I don't know what they would or wouldn't like. I would not want to offer them something that they wouldn't like and irritate them. I want to give them something they would like. So it's really important for the person receiving the reading, or if you're doing this yourself, obviously you would know what your spirits would like, to have something kind of readily prepared to bring. And then typically these offerings will either be burned or they would be buried. So make sure that whatever you have as an offering is something that can either be burned or buried, and try to keep it also kind of eco-friendly. If it's going to be buried into the earth, we don't want something sitting there that's going to take a long time to decompose. And if we're going to burn something, we don't want a whole bunch of artificial chemicals and pesticides all over it because it's going to be burned. So also keep that in mind too. And then as far as the representation of that said spirit, if you were my client, obviously you would take that home. I'm not going to keep your mom's wedding ring, for instance. Okay, so at this point in time, you would have gathered all your supplies. You would have gotten the spirit's name. You would have gotten the spirit's birthday. You would have had an offering prepared, and you have your representation ready. So that's all like the first half of Romani mediumship, Gypsy mediumship, and how I do mediumship. The second half is where you really take it into practice. So what you would do then, and this is just an example, but you would want to take a candle, like a chime candle like this. This is a purple one, but I'm not here to police your color magic. So you use whatever color candle you would resonate with. Oftentimes, many people usually use white or black for this, especially working with the spirits, but you use whatever candle you feel is best. This is just the purple one. I would not use the purple one probably. I think that you could also, if you knew that spirit's favorite color, you could also work candle magic and color magic with their favorite color as well to have another connection, because that's what it's all about, is forging these connections between our earthly realm and the spiritual realm. So you would want to take a candle, and then you would want to take something that you could, like a knife or a paper clip or something that you could inscribe onto this. So I would take this candle here and I would write that spirit's name onto this candle. So like Mary Jo Smith. Okay, and then I might turn the candle around a little bit and then I would probably write that person's birthday onto the candle, right? So February 2nd, 1924, da 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 da. And then I might even also write the kind of runic symbol, I guess we can call it, for the zodiac. So for Libra, it almost looks like the little scales. So maybe I would write that. Or for Aquarius, the little waves, right? So I'd write that in there. Okay. So then you have your whole candle dressed and ready to go. Sorry guys, my phone is blowing up. So then you would have this candle dressed and ready to go. So then what you would want to do is you would take a piece of paper, and you have a piece of paper here, and you would like kind of put a lighter to this and you would melt it a little bit and stick it onto the piece of paper. So then it's on this piece of paper here, and on that piece of paper, you would also write that person's full name and also that person's birthday here. And then this is a part where you can use any sigils you'd like to use to help you in your communion with the other side. I oftentimes just put like a pentacle, and then their name, and then their birthday, and then I'll melt the candle and stick it here in the middle of the pentacle. And then you have a little, almost like a placement card for your candle. If you want to add crystals to this, you can. If you want to dress this candles and oils or herbs, you can. That's kind of up to you if you would like to add that at this point in time. And then what you would want to do is you would want to take this candle, light this candle, and I'm not recommending to anyone that they leave a flame unattended, but try to make sure that it's in a pretty safe spot. You can put this in a flame-proof bowl. You could put this in your cauldron. It'd probably be pretty safe in there. What I do is I let this burn and I typically go to bed. That's what I do. I know, freak out, use caution, figure out how it's best for you to do it. I've never had any issues. Oftentimes before this whole thing will even start, I also take a cleansing bath, which I could make another video on that as well, but I take a ritual bath just to kind of prepare myself. I go through all those steps we just mentioned, and then I would take this candle, light it, and it would burn out completely. While that candle is burning, I would go to bed. I would lay in bed, and this is where all those connections that you made really come into play. So while you're sleeping, you may or may not see symbols or hear things or make connections because you opened yourself up to this particular spirit. So, some people are like, oh, well, I don't want to be astrally attacked. I don't want to have any bad experiences while I'm sleeping, blah, blah, blah. Chances are you are not going to experience that because this said spirit you are trying to contact is the only one that you allowed permission to come through. And while you are sleeping, that spirit will reveal to you someone's mother or brother or father or whoever, someone even from history, let's say. That spirit is going to reveal to you signs or symbols or imagery or little video clips in your dreams, or you will get a sign in your dream that this spirit wants to communicate with you. Here's another huge thing about this is that just because you want to talk to that spirit does not mean that spirit is going to talk to you. This comes into play especially when you are working with someone else's spirits. For instance, let's say I'm doing a working with your father. I never met him. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I'm a complete stranger to him. So I'm sending him these messages, trying to connect to him. And if I get no images, if I get no nothing in my dream, I dream of nothing at all, and I wake up, I take that as a sign that your father's spirit just does not want to work with me, does not want to talk to me, and I cannot make that connection. And that is when I would typically tell that client what I just told you, and I would say I can try again later. Um, Obviously, I wouldn't collect any payment or anything, but I could try again later and we can go from there, or you can look for another medium. But that's how I run my business. I keep it real. So if I don't make that connection, you're going to know. And I encourage everyone to try this themselves because I'm sure if this was your own ancestor, your own spirit, you would have a much easier time getting through than someone foreign. Now, if you do see images or symbols, and I've had random stuff too, stuff that I didn't even know was really connected until after I sat down with that client and we started talking and I tell them what I saw, like purses or lipstick or hair care or random packets of cigarettes or cigars or flowers, like flower beds of roses or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you will actually see visually in your dream that spirit. Sometimes you will hear visually that spirit. So it just really kind of depends. I also find that given that spirit's zodiac, given their elemental sign, they also will speak in different ways. For instance, air sign elementals or air sign spirits tend to kind of speak more in a symbolic fashion. So take that into consideration as well if you so choose to. Take everything I have to say and, if you like it, incorporate it. If you don't, leave it. It's fine. This is just how I do it. So then after, let's say you've made that connection, after you've made that connection, then you can proceed to your favorite form of divination, whether that be a scrying mirror, whether that be cards, runes, a pendulum, all the above. Use your form of divination to get that message across. So if it's for a client, use that divination, channel the message from their ancestor. You've given that spirit permission to come through and relay this message. And there you go. Now you have it all set up to where now when you do your divination, you know where the message is coming from. You've invoked said spirit, and you're good to go. Or if it's for yourself, then you can do this the exact same way. Get out your favorite form of divination. You have invoked that spirit. You have allowed that spirit to offer its blessings and its wisdom, and you can now relay that wisdom and blessings through the cards. After this is said and done, if you're doing this for someone else, this is definitely where you could want to kind of bring back in your cleansing and protection magics and just kind of clear the air. Whether you do that by a smudge, whether you do that by like Palo Santo, whether you do that by the envisionment of white light or warding, or, I think all of our mileage varies. Typically, if I do this for a client after the service is done, I would thank that spirit. We would give the offerings to that spirit, and they would take their representation home with them, and and then I would smudge everything and cleanse everything and thank them and be like, okay, thank you very much. You're dismissed, thank you. Or if this was one of my spirits I'm working with, I might not dismiss them. Maybe I want them to kind of stick around if they so choose to. They don't always. Sometimes they have their own things to do in the other world, but they will stick around. But if you kind of smudge and cleanse and kind of tell them all to go away, they will. They listen. They're typically pretty respectful. So that is how, I guess, the gypsy mediumship works. That is how I do it. If you would like to incorporate this into your practice, feel free. And if you have any other additional comments or concerns, feel free to comment on this and message me. And I hope you guys all are going to have a great summer solstice. Many blessings, guys. Bye.